Okay, everybody's mic's good? We're all good? All right, again, welcome to our meeting of June 29th, our special meeting, and if we'll do a roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Chair Madrone?
Present.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Good afternoon.
Supervisor Bohn?
Yep.
And Supervisor Arroyo? Here. And Supervisor Wilson is out.
All right, please join us for the salute to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. And so at this point, we're going to go down through our agenda, and our first item is a consent calendar. We only have one item, and that is the California State Library Building 4 Library Infrastructure Grant for the Arcata Library. And I'll see if there's any questions or clarifications from the board. And I don't think we have any presentation. There is information in our agenda about all the great improvements that are going to happen at the Arcata Library thanks to this grant. And so with that, we'll go to public comment. I usually start with Zoom. Looking at Zoom, I do not see any hands up. And just FYI for those in Zoom, there's only one, but turn your audio off from any video feed because there is a delay and you might miss your opportunity to speak if you choose to do so. And there is a raise hand option in the Zoom. So again, seeing nothing there, I'll go here to the audience today. Anybody here wish to comment on our consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. And is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve consent.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Bushnell, second by Supervisor Arroyo. And can we do a roll call, please?
Yes, Chair, thank you. Supervisor Arroyo?
Yes.
Supervisor Bohn?
Yep.
Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes.
And Supervisor Madrone?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-0.
Great. And next we have the most important item of the day, and that is department reports. And this is item number 1 on the Ferndale Fairgrounds grandstands, which I believe is why everybody is here today. And I believe Tom Matson is here to present on this item. Welcome, Director Matson.
Good afternoon, Chair Madrone. Tom Matson, Director of Public Works. Yes, in the December 20th earthquake, damage did occur to the Fairgrounds grandstand out in Ferndale, the county-owned property that is leased to the Fair Association for management. We hired a structural engineer at the request of the fair. The board had paid for that. We brought an item to the board. They came up in April, did an inspection. They recently gave us the initial draft note that in a major earthquake, that the roof of that facility could fall. The grandstands will not collapse, but the roof could come off of that. And there's a fall zone around the entire grandstand of about 66 feet that needs to be protected. At that time, we asked our engineer to come up with some options for us to immediately basically try to reopen the grandstand before the fair if we could. That is the project you've probably all heard about, the $1 million stabilization. We've met with a number of contractors on site. Several have said they just don't have the resources, but we did get a note from one contractor this morning that they could do it if they got the ability to work 6 days a week and got notice to move ahead very quickly. We are still looking at the other option of basically a controlled failure where we would control where the roof could fall. If we can do that and protect the racetrack, then the races could still occur, but the grandstand could not be occupied. And then there's the long-term issue of all the issues with the grandstand that the deferred maintenance and the earthquake repairs that need to be followed up on. This project does not do anything for the deferred maintenance or the earthquake repairs. It simply stabilizes the facility, similar to what Caltrans is doing on the pier of Fernbridge right now, where their pier is cracked and they're putting in stabilization on both sides of it and wrapping it together while they go through the process of what they're going to do with that bridge. This is the same thing. We're just stabilizing the existing facility and not making any real improvements or repairs to the damage that the facility has, but it would make it usable. So there's lots of things to think about. one thing hanging out there is Cal OES funding possibilities. That is not a guarantee. It does qualify for some OES funding because it was damaged in the earthquake, and that is 75% reimbursable, but they will not pay for deferred maintenance. And we do not have an approved DSR, damage survey report, from them at this point. We're pretty confident we can get some reimbursement, but I can't guarantee that, and I can't tell you how much the share would be on that. So we are looking for direction if we want to proceed with this. The fair certainly does not have the funds on hand to cover the cost of this, and so we would need to talk about how that would be funded as well.
Okay, and I noticed in your report, there was also a discussion about we can't get funding both for temporary stabilization and then replacement later. It would be one or the other. Is that correct?
That's what.
Again, nothing's guaranteed.
That's what the Cali OES staffer has told us, but there are different components. We will argue, of course, that the emergency stabilization is actually what's called an emergency protective measure to protect the public, which is allowable in most emergencies, but they have indicated to us that they'll be willing to look at reimbursing for one or the other option, but not both. So we don't know the official answer on that yet.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bohn.
And there's other places. CDFA has expressed an interest in working, obviously, for funding. Is there a way to incorporate what we're talking about? And I think you've talked to 2 contractors?
We've actually talked to 3, one that includes a team, and then we have another contractor looking at it today.
I just talked to him, and he says it's doable as long as he can get the red iron here. He can do the footings before the red iron gets here. He can do the Simpson ties. So what I'm trying to figure out with the plans that have been thrown out there, and I think it was asked by somebody if it's a short, because if you're gonna use the analogy of Caltrans the other night says this fix may be the fix we're doing for the next 40 years.
That's not true with this fix.
So as what they're saying is they can absorb. So can this fix tie in to a permanent fix, or are you talking about a tear down and a complete rebuild for permanent fix? I mean,
We are not talking about a tear down and complete. We're talking about a retrofit of the existing facility, and I don't know we haven't even gone there at this point. Our whole focus was looking at how could we get this facility back open for the fair.
Because I'm looking at how some of these buildings are done, seismically retrofitted to be inhabitable, but long-term they have to do a full-blown seismic retrofit, and then they tie into what they did for the temporary. And so I'm saying, so we're moving forward instead of throwing one and then the other out there. But it sounds like, the decision had to be made yesterday, but it sounds like as long as you can get the red iron here, that it can be done. And I don't know if we're going to just have them all work together. If we bid, emergency situation, we don't have time for a bid process.
No, we would go into the emergency and directly hire. The ones that have told us they couldn't do it wasn't because of the material, it's because they just don't have the manpower. The one that says is willing to dedicate, but like I say, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, 5 days, one 10-hour day, and they need to get notice as soon as possible if we are to do this.
Okay.
What is the red iron? I'm sorry. What did you mean?
The beams.
The beams.
The
are
beams,
red.
the I-beams and everything else.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you. Through the chair, you had said you don't think the fair has the money, but are they obligated with or contracted? As I'm reading, this is not regular maintenance.
This is not regular maintenance, but they were obligated to maintain the facility. Anything that is earthquake related would be the county's responsibility. But again, I'm not an attorney. The way I'm operating right now is looking to move forward rather than argue about who's going to pay for it right now. Just move forward and figure out those details based on the lawyers and the contract. But there's definitely 2 different. It's definitely I believe a shared responsibility moving forward because the earthquake is not included. Earthquake is not included in normal maintenance.
Okay, and then you said you thought the fix would be around $1 million, but you don't know that until you would get a contract. Is that correct? Or just to stabilize it?
That is correct. That's what the contractors have been ballparking for us for the last couple of days. And they confirmed it yesterday that it'd probably be around $1 million, but we don't know yet because we don't have a written contract.
So can you tell me what the temporary or the stabilization, is it taking the roof off and just leaving it open, or?
No, it's providing supports on all sides, 25-foot intervals, metal supports all around the outside of the facility.
Okay, and then to, we're not flush with any kind of money, so can the CAO speak to, I know we have some tribal contingency monies and we also have a finance plan, so what does that look like for us to pay for this? Right now?
Yes, we have $1 million that's available in the remainder of our 2020 finance plan that could be accessed immediately. And I would certainly advocate for that to be the first route for funding. And then, as you know, we have $2 million in local and tribal consistency funds that your board has decided not to allocate and to wait to see how the next fiscal year shakes out to see, what our capacity might look like at the end of that year.
So with the $1 million in the finance plan, if it happens to go over, we could borrow from the tribal contingencies with the hopes that we would maybe get it back from Cal OES to get this going? Is that something
Correct.
that would
Correct.
work?
Yes, and through negotiations as we move through this process with the Fair Board on what reimbursement might look like on their end.
Okay. So are you wanting to go to public comment before a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments, questions from the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Zoom first. We do have one person in Zoom. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand. And if it takes you a little bit to get to it, I'll come back to you. We have nobody else in Zoom, so at this point, we'll go to those in the audience. Anybody would like to come up and speak on this particular item in front of us, please come forward to the podium and share with us your thoughts. Don't be bashful.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
I would just like to say that I understand there has been a lot of damage throughout the county with the earthquakes, and that not necessarily are we more important than homes and all of that, but I know that being the county facility, that the fairgrounds and the 10 days that we have generate quite a bit of money to bring in to help the small businesses and to help the community in the county. And if we cannot use the grandstands and we can't have horse racing, that eliminates the majority of that revenue that comes from out of the area into this area. And that helps the small businesses continue, that helps the grocery stores, that helps the gas stations, that helps the taxes that you guys get from those. Obviously, it helps us as well, but I just think that this has to be a group effort and we have to work together to figure out how to make this happen. But we also got to make sure that we don't sacrifice the long-term viability of the fair to make it happen in 1 year. We don't have the resources to do it, but we also don't own the property. But we're willing to work together, I think. But we have a special meeting tonight as a board to talk about that, so we're not here to commit to anything, but I'm just saying I know that it has to be a team effort. And meeting with the contractors yesterday, that was one thing we said. It's a county property, it's a county fairgrounds, we're all part of Humboldt County. Let's figure out a way to make this happen as a group so that we can have our annual fair in the same way that everyone's used to having it. So thank you guys for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comments. Welcome.
I volunteered since 2006 as a photographer for the fair. And a couple questions is, why wasn't a local engineer chosen for the inspection? Second question is, how often do you inspect your buildings for integrity regardless of earthquake? It's still standing. It's gone through a lot of earthquakes. I'm really upset. I wasn't able to talk earlier this week because I didn't know, I missed the agenda item, came in late. I got a letter that morning that said the airport would be closed the very next day. You've got businesses like UPS and freight companies that were shocked.
Excuse me, we're here to talk only
Okay,
about
but
the
I'm just saying, you
grandstand.
don't maintain your buildings. Murray Field has not been maintained for 40 years, okay? You need to maintain the buildings. This is probably one of the first inspections maybe in a long time of that building. It should have been done on a regular basis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome.
Thanks. Ken Hammock. Just really brief comment. I think, we've been through a lot with COVID and a lot of things shut down. We're all looking for normalcy. So I agree with the previous speaker. We should be looking for ways to collaborate and remedy this for the safety of the community as well. But this event's really important to Humboldt. It really centers us. People come from all over. And as part of the Humboldt County Visitors Bureau, I can tell you, we get a lot of outside visitors to come to see us and the horse races and everything else. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you very much. Anyone else, please step up. Come on up. No worries, take your time. Yeah, and you can sit there. There you go.
I'm Michael Gunner. I currently reside at the fairgrounds in the RV park. I have since right after Thanksgiving of last year. I'm also disabled and met with Mr. Titus and Jill earlier this month about the ADA compliance that they don't have, especially like in the RV area in the restrooms. However, the stadium 3 years ago got an elevator that's still sitting on the ground. Depending on how the meeting goes tonight and what they do, my attorneys will probably file for an injunction to shut the fairgrounds down. Dr. Farrell from the California Horse Racing Association, who's the chairman, met this morning, is in the same business as I am, veterinary business. My suggestion to him, which will be tomorrow morning, is to not license it. You've got major problems and people who are disabled are being discriminated against. So you need to take that into consideration. It's just not the structural part. I understand that, having been a dairy farmer my entire life and having buildings massive like that. You need to look at taking care of everything at once. Otherwise, you're not going to have a county fair. My wife and I met at a county fair. So it's dear to our heart, but on the other hand, as a disabled person, I have to be an advocate. I've never done this before, but I need to stand up and speak at this point. You have a great manager in Jill Duffy down there. She's been really hospitable to us and has listened to our concerns, but the board ultimately has the ability to say yay or nay to everything, and you have to look at the whole picture. And thank you for your time, Supervisors.
Thank you very much. Anybody else, please make your way up to the podium. This is your chance to speak. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Cindy Olson. I'm here as a private citizen and former 24-year board member. As a board member, I was chair of the racing committee. Currently, Greg Gomes is the chair of racing, and he's doing an absolutely terrific job. I'm here to update all of you on the work that has been done on the racing facilities during my 24 years. 1, we just had a lift installed in our grandstand to accommodate the disabled. The cost for this was over $75,000. That amount was covered by a trust. A grant application was written and the trust approved it. 2, 2 of our turns on our track were banked by one of our major sponsors in order to generate safety for the horses, as our track is a half-mile track, or what they call a bull ring, compared to the other larger tracks that are the 1-mile tracks. 3, the inner rail was replaced at a cost of approximately $35,000 for safety if a horse or jockey were to hit it or go over. Most of the outside rail has been replaced, This was, again, one of our sponsors that helped us with materials and labor. 4, approximately 15 to 18 years ago, CARF replaced our racing offices, which included the Paymaster CHRB office, racing office, steward's office, and jockey quarters. The cost at that time was approximately $600,000. 5th, the fair has constructed a super box just past the finish line to accommodate the higher-end sponsors and the handicapped. It contains seating for 12. 6, one of our major sponsors over the years has put on 6 new roofs on the Arlington barns. The local Ferndale Jockey Club has done many projects and has given money to the fair to increase incentives to trainers and jockeys.
30 seconds.
Better hurry. Okay. The Humboldt County Fair has been a good steward of our county fairgrounds. The community loves and supports the fair. We have been here for approximately 127 years and are the smallest racing fair in California. The Humboldt County Fair Board has fought long and hard to keep racing. We have overcome many obstacles and persevered. It is crucial that we are able to put on the race meet this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else who would like to comment on this item, please come forward. Yes, welcome.
Good afternoon. Jill Duffy. I am currently the interim general manager with the Humboldt County Fair. I just really want to thank all of you for pivoting so very quickly. We got the more formal notice at the end of last week, and we announced this to our board on Monday evening, and you are now hearing the report, and we're actually able to have a open public discussion about this. Excuse me, I went to the wrong one. The Humboldt County Fair Association is going to be meeting this evening at 5 o'clock, so we would love to have any sort of input and decisions that you're needing from us so that we can turn around and get those answers back to you as quickly as possible. We've worked very closely with Public Works Department. I also had a meeting earlier today with Ryan with Headwaters Fund, and Alicia has been nothing but really incredibly supportive as we try to work things through. So if you have any questions for us, we are ready and able to answer those. But for the moment, we just want to say thank you for all of the support and moving forward. Any
Great.
questions for me?
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Jill. You keep stepping into all kinds of different roles for us in the county. Appreciate that. Okay, we'll bring it back to the board. Seeing no other comments, Supervisor Bushnell?
Thank you through the chair. So if I was to take a crack at a motion to approve the funds, what would that look like, given that you only have $1 million in the finance and it might go over?
A motion to approve utilization of $1 million in 2020 finance plan with direction to staff to return to your board should the needs exceed that.
And to authorize Tom, would it be authorizing Public Works also to move forward with that? What authority are you looking for?
Authorize us to move forward with the stabilization project.
Okay. Did you get the finance portion?
I got approve utilization of $1 million in the finance plan, and then I didn't get the rest, and then authorize Public Works to move forward with the stabilization.
So
Can you repeat that, CAO, please? The motion, suggested motion?
Approve utilization of $1 million in the 2020 finance plan to conduct the stabilization with direction to staff to return at a later date should additional needs be identified. Director Mattson to proceed forward with the stabilization project. And furthermore, staff direction to proceed forward with negotiating reimbursement and cost sharing with the Fair Board would be helpful as well.
Okay, and Nikki, I'm assuming we can also pull the details off the archive, but
Yeah.
does the board have a sense of what the motion is? Is anybody confused about the motion?
No, but I do want to make a clarification if I could before I
Please.
make that motion. So the negotiations that you would do with the Fair Board, who would be making those negotiations?
That would be at your board's discretion, but I would probably suggest Director Mattson and I could conduct that.
Okay, would you like a supervisor to attend in that, or is it?
Totally up to the discretion of your board, and
Well, I would
welcome.
also add to that motion that we authorize Supervisor Bohn, just because he's very active in that, and that's in his district, to be part of that discussion. Is that okay with
Okay.
you, Rex? Okay, so I'll make that motion.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I had comments. Go ahead. Do you want to?
Let's get a second before we
I'll
move forward.
second.
Okay. So we have a motion by Supervisor Bushnell and a
If I'm
second
second,
by...
I'll do it with a comment. I'd like the discussion at the Fair Board tonight to be, as Andy said, and Mr. Titus, I have a hard time calling you that. As Mr. Titus said, when we're looking at this, it is a partnership. And so maybe a long-term deal that hopefully we can get settled through CDFA and the Office of OES. As I was telling you earlier, Oscar from the Fair Board, from the Fair Racing Association, they are very concerned about this. Our biggest issue, as Chair Titus said, is if we take a year off, we're going to have a really, really hard time getting them back next year. And as far as the ADA issues that you brought up, I mean, we get sued all the time, so you do what you got to do. But I thought the elevator was working.
The elevator's still sitting on the ground. I
took a
took a picture of it last night.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, I was under the understanding Beacom had installed it. But anyway, I don't follow. Anyway, I think, because I do think we need to be partners on this as we go through, because we're all going to have to be in this together to get the funding. So I think you'll discuss that tonight at your meeting. We can't pre-discuss that. So I have full faith in that we can move forward. But I think the long term, and the other thing is just after the success of the Redwood Acres Fair, people look forward to the Humboldt County Fair, the racing. A lot of people, that's their vacation, that's their staycation, because that's all they can afford with the price of gas and everything else. So I think to deny that to the people, and in all honesty, and I was going to ask, since we have a second on this, and I wanted to ask Mr. Mattson a question, we still got to fix it. No matter what, we still have to fix it with this report. All we're doing is speeding up the process.
We either fix it or we fence it off and never use it. I do not recommend that option.
Okay, so it has to be fixed. So our hands are tied. We're just basically lighting the fire to the fuse to get it done a little bit quicker.
Thank you. And Supervisor Arroyo.
Thank you. I appreciate the motion and the inclusion of Supervisor Bohn to address this, especially since it's so central to your district. I am supportive of it, but I do want to comment that it's a very difficult time to consider anything above the $1 million that we can finance in our finance plan. And so I appreciate that includes coming back to this board should there be a cost above and beyond that amount. And I think I would be remiss if and I also my spouse and I, our first date was at the Humboldt County Fair, so holds a special place in my heart too. And so this is not any comment on the value of the fair in the community, but I will note that we've gotten, I at least have gotten quite a lot of communication about people's concerns about this investment and concerns about horse racing, which I'm sort of stating just as I'm a conduit for that information, and I think that's fair to include in the conversation. But that said, I know that it's a big revenue generator, and the fair has a lot of other aspects that mean a lot to a lot of people. So I get it. I just have a lot of apprehension about spending more than what we can finance given the state of our county budget. So I feel comfortable with the motion as it stands, and And I dug into the lease a little bit and the language around that, and I imagine that there will be a lot to sort out once we address the immediate concerns. And again, I'm on board with addressing those immediate concerns, but what it looks like longer term, I think we do have to grapple with. And this is not an easy time to consider expenditures above and beyond what we can include in the finance plan.
Thank you. Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you. Through the chair. So what would the time frame look like that when we would know, or if we would know if we were going to get reimbursements from, I'm assuming it's FEMA?
No, not FEMA. This
No.
is state-only, Cal
state.
OES, and
Okay.
I would say months.
Months.
Yes.
When will that engagement start?
It has already started.
Okay, and okay, thank you.
Supervisor Bohn.
And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what goes on. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on inside this building. I mean, people are going to have their own say. The problem is, it's our building. And when you look at the lease, it is not normal wear and tear. It was a catastrophic event, act of God, quote unquote. But there's going to be people who don't believe in that either. But it was out of the hands of everybody involved. And we are in tune. We have to take care of our buildings. I mean, even though, they maintain, we give them something to maintain. And this was out of their control, our control. So it's not like we're just funding something, but it's our facility. And it has to be fixed. And it's not just the 66 feet. I mean, it takes a big chunk if you're going to put a fence around it. And then we're going to have a bigger issue. And I would imagine, looking around lately, if we were going to look to demolish or something like that, we're far exceeding this number with the disposal, with the lead paint probably that's underneath, with everything else that's involved. So this is probably the cheapest way to do it as possible. And we probably should look at, I would rather not call it a Band-Aid, because I think it's a little bit more than that. I think we're looking at structurally, and I would like to make sure, and I know we're on a tough timeline and everything else, but everything we put up can be added to further structurally make it sound, much like any other retrofit. So,
Correct. And we have talked a little bit about the timeline of this, and the engineers also talked to us about it could be improved for a much longer term, but if we want to get something done and get it done so the fair is open this year, this is the way to go. We can improve this by banding and some other things, adding to it to buy more time in the future.
and that's including the existing red iron and angles that are going to go up and tying into those, because
Correct.
they're going to be, the footings are going to be 6 foot deep, they're going to be concrete, there's going to be a lot to them, so you're not going to want to. So I think, and talking to the contractors I have, which is the same ones you've talked to, I think we can meet that goal. But at the end of the day, we have to fix this. There's just no way around it, with money or not, you know.
Thank you. And Supervisor Bushnell?
I had one last question, and then I guess we'll call for the motion.
I've got some comments and questions.
Okay. Tom, do you think it's necessary to come back and report to the board how it's going, or is that just something you could do?
Generally, unless there was a problem, or I would give you a heads up that it's done. We always bring back contracts for ratification when they're done, but I certainly keep everybody in the loop, because if it starts to go sideways, I want to know early and often about what's going on and what we can do to keep it on track.
Okay, and then one last question with the contract. I'm assuming will happen right away, and so you'll know a dollar amount if it's going to exceed, even though they've said it's $1 million. Things happen.
Yeah, we will write a contract for, up to $1 million, not to exceed $1 million, and go from there. Our engineer still has to refine a few details that we can get together. But it should happen rather quickly. We are under emergency, so I can write the contract without any other authorization. Under an emergency, we don't have to go to bid. This is a very high-profile, short timeline project, and yes, we will be as tight as we can.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. So a couple of questions. What's the status of the ADA improvements at the fairgrounds? Do we have any information on that?
Yes, your ADA expert is in the room, and so Assistant County Administrative Officer Karen Clower, also your Chief Operating Officer, can give you an update on that.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. During the consent decree between 2016 and 2020, we did quite a bit of work at the fairground and met the terms of the consent decree at that time. There is a large amount of work that still needs to be completed at the fairgrounds. It is included in our compliance plan that your board adopted in 2020. So we do have a timeline laid out for that. We are looking forward to working with the Fair Association on completing the barriers that remain.
Is that this year, next year? What's the timeline?
The timeline actually extended through the end of the compliance plan because there is extensive barriers throughout the fairgrounds as a whole. So we would be happy to begin working with the Fair Association on completing the barriers in a systematic process.
So it might be a few years of work or a few years out still?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate that information.
Of course.
This is a budget item, yes?
No, because we're not actually asking for any particular supplementals or specific budget adjustments at this time. We'll return with that, and that would require a 4/5 vote to finalize that. But today we just want general guidance and consensus with the board that this is something that you are supportive with moving forward, using these funds in this manner.
And then when would that come back for a final decision with a 4/5 vote?
Next couple weeks, we'd have to, we got to draft an agenda item and return back with that. And I suspect we could do that in conjunction with Tom as an update on the project and also a final on the bid.
So that would need to come in along with the contract at the same time, basically?
No, the contract will be signed between me and the contractor real soon. We will know, and we can attach it as a copy or as a reference, but it's pretty standard. We have emergency standard form contracts that we use, and just to get the people to work in immediately. And so we will get as detailed a bid list as we can, but this is really a run and gun show, as most disaster repairs are.
Understood. But what if there wasn't a 4/5 support when it came back to us with the budget? I mean, how does that work if we've already contracted? Just asking practical questions.
I think we would know that today if we don't get 4 of you to vote on allocating $1 million.
Well, there's a 4th person potentially here, a 5th person,
Which
That's
could
not
potentially be our 1 no, but with 4 of you, a budget adjustment for $1 million would pass. So I would hope that you would, if there is not support for that we would know that today.
Understood. Okay. So a question about revenues. I mean, we're talking about, there's a lot of issues here. Number one, I support the fair. I think it is a very important aspect of our community. It's the longest running fair in the state of California. Is that correct? I think I remember hearing that stat. And I have certainly loved taking my family to the fair many, many times. But, as you all probably know, if you've been following our county budget situation, we're in a world of hurt with our budget. We may have $1,000 left in our finance plan, but that doesn't mean we're not in a big hole. And in the next year or two, we're looking at potentially being in an even bigger hole. So like you would with your own pocketbook, I think this is a very important decision to be considering in terms of a lot of different ramifications. I did not hear that there's really a guarantee that it would be done in time for the fair. I heard that the contractor said that if they could work 6 days a week and a couple 10-hour days, that they could get it done. So is there a guarantee if we're going to spend this $1 million on temporary fixes that may or may not be able to be wrapped into the permanent fix, because there was some back and forth on that. Are we putting a guarantee in there that the contractor would have to be complete with the things before the fair starts, so that we know that this investment is actually going to come to fruition?
That would be very difficult because you would have to write out all the force majeures. What if there's another earthquake in the middle of this? What if there's another epidemic of something? We will write in their active construction days. We put that in every single contract. You have this many days to do it or you get liquidated damages. With this high profile of a project, I highly doubt our local contractor, who has a very good reputation in the community, is not going to meet what he says he can do.
And are we talking about getting it done a day before, or a week before, a month before? I mean, what's the
We will
sense?
have to work that out. I assume he's worked a little room into there and he's left one day a week open to work, so.
Okay. CAO Hayes?
Just a clarification on the financial impacts of allocating $1 million of the finance plan. Those dollars are only available for infrastructure improvements. That plan expires at this point in time in 2024. Until the expiration of the plan, we are just obligated to pay interest, the same rate that our county pool is incurring on the total balance that has been drawn. We are looking to expand that plan out further while we continue to do these infrastructure projects financed through the 2020 finance plan. But either way, at the culmination of the interim financing period, it'll be amortized out on a 20-year loan, with this amount, roughly being $100,000 a year in annual payments.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. One last question, and then I'll go back to the rest of the board. How much do the horse races net each year on average? Could somebody answer that question? Mr. Titus or Jill?
Do I need to go back up there?
Yes, please.
Zoom won't hear you if you're not.
And understand, I did hear very clearly from Supervisor Bohn the concept that if we let it die for a year, that it may be very difficult to get it up and running again, and that is certainly weighing heavy on my decision. I don't want to see that happen by any means, but I'm just wondering how much revenue, net revenue, does the horse races bring in?
Well, it's really hard to define that because the races don't get any credit. It's our main event, but none of the admissions or vendors or any of that stuff goes towards the numbers for horse racing. So it's hard to give you an accurate number. I can tell you that our numbers would be way down on admissions, on parking, on vendor concessions, on the bar. I mean, all of that stuff, if you eliminate horse racing. But to give you a number on what horse racing brings, it's a large piece of the whole pie. So it would be hard to say it's $200,000 or $100,000. We don't have an accurate way to give you those numbers because we don't break out who goes into the races and who doesn't. I mean, if you go there on Ladies' Hat Day or the other Saturday, there's 5,000 people there. Would they come without the horse racing? I don't know. Some may, most probably wouldn't. So, I mean, the truthful answer is we don't know.
But it's not $1 million.
It's, for 1 year, it's not $1 million, no.
Somewhere between a few $100,000 or something.
But I can guarantee you if you don't invest this million this year, the county is going to lose $3 to $4 million that the fair brings in that support the local businesses.
Understood. Yeah, no, I know that's
that number I can give you pretty confidently.
Thank you very much for
You're
that.
welcome.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I just say that, my big concern is putting so much money into a temporary fix, and I didn't hear a very definitive answer about whether or not that temporary fix investment was going to be able to be part of the permanent fix. There's some thought that it might be able to be, but I didn't hear that that was actually necessarily possible.
It will have to be tied into, because I cannot see them going in and recommending we rip this all out and do something else. We don't know what that permanent fix is right now. We have not looked at it. We have not even conceptually designed it. Our whole focus, because of the short term, was can we do something to make this operate this year? If that's not what we want to do, then we need that direction, but that's the same direction I take on a road storm damage project. What do I have to do to get it open as quickly as possible and then worry about the long-term rebuild? So I'm sorry, that's my approach. That's always been my approach in disasters. Make it usable as soon as possible. But if you don't want to go to that direction, I need to know that.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm just, concerned that the initial response from OES is that they're not going to fund both. They're not going to fund a temporary fix and a permanent fix. And so if we invest this up front, we're still going to be looking at how do we come up with the money for the permanent fix, which is probably going to be a whole lot more than $1 million, I suspect. So I'm just, that's of concern, in how we invest our money here as a county, because it's a big picture thing, right? It's not just this short-term picture. So those are absolutely concerning to me. But again, I've had enough time at the mic, and I'll pass it to Supervisor Bohn.
So if I could make a quick comment on that. We always have the option of not applying for the temporary funding. If they make that determination that they're not going to fund the temporary, but only a permanent, we can always say, okay, we will eat the temporary and still go after the permanent. Nothing is off the table at this point. Everything is on the table.
But you want to have the OES response immediately.
We won't have the no until we complete a disasters.
Right.
The report gets approved by the state of what they're going to fund, and up until that time that report gets signed, everything is under negotiations between the county and Cal OES.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bohn.
Yeah, and horse racing isn't the only event, but this has nothing to do with horse racing. This has nothing to do with, and I was going to mention the fact we don't have to go for the temporary. The temporary fix is just going to be like any structurally seismic retrofit. What is done on a temporary basis, 99.9% of the time is tied into the permanent fix. They're not going to do, because it's going to cost, what they're putting in is going to cost probably close to $300,000 to take out when they're done, and then they're going to have all the iron to deal with. So it's going to work. But the factor it's our building. It got damaged in an earthquake. We have to go find the money to fix it, unless we sit here and say is it going to pay for itself the first year? No. I mean, we're doing ADA repairs at the planning and building department in a building we're trying to get out of, and we're spending $150,000 doing ADA for there. So as we move forward, should we be doing that? No, we should be finding a way to get out of that building, but no, we aren't. This building is ours. We have to fix it. I mean, there's just no other way around that, how we get there. And we're asking Tom a lot of questions. He got the final report on Monday. When we get it, he's been working on it since before then, but the state's not going to say. He talked to a staffer that said, I don't think we'll fund both. We're going to probably go a little bit over that. We're going to talk to our state. We're going to talk to our state guys. Maybe we gave $1 million to the crabs. I'm sure we can get $1 million for the Humboldt County Fair last year for improvements. So we can work with our state guys to make sure we get funded and everything else. But at the end of the day, the only question is, are we going to maintain our building or not maintain our building? I mean, the simple process. Are we spending, is it probably the best way to spend our money? No, I'd rather spend the $1 million on the Mattoll Road. But, because that's ours too. But we have to fix this because this has a red tag on it. And unless we take a 66-foot circle around that, it's going to take out a lot of other events, because I think it takes out the whole, if we go 66 feet, it takes out half of the round of the circle. It takes out, goes all the way to the edge of the campground, I would imagine. Is the office within 66 feet?
No.
Okay, pretty close.
It is close. But
yeah, so we're just going to have nervous staff personnel that hopefully the engineer knows 66. Hopefully the next earthquake knows it's got to fall within 66 feet. But I'm saying we're in a position now that we have to fix our building. Is it comfortable? It doesn't matter what's happening in our building, but we have to fix our building. That's where we're at, or decide just not to have the building. And I think that's it. And I don't think we can afford not to have the building for concerts, for motorcycle races, other things we do in the future, for other things that are historically happened at that fairgrounds. That's not the only thing that happens. Things happen on that midway in front of the grandstands on a regular basis. They have fundraisers there. They have Safe and Sober's been there. They have the fundraising for the horse races there. So there's a lot of things that go on around that grandstand. So it's not just the races. And I know I got a couple emails for horse races. I got a couple, you know, I was telling Cindy 63 years ago, Jack took me to my first horse races at the Humboldt County Fair. So I didn't meet anybody there.
Thank you, Supervisor Bohn. Supervisor Bushnell.
Thank you. A couple things. So I understand, and thank you to both of you for, you know, our finances are not in great shape, and we all know that. And it's been a topic for 3 months while we've been trying to get our budget together. So we would be remiss not to talk about it and bring those concerns up. And I think the, you know, the urgency also is not, for me, is not about just the horse races, although I know I've been to the fair when there aren't horse races and there's not as many people there, like by half usually. But my concern in our community with business is not great in our community at all, and most businesses are suffering right now. Sales tax is down, we know this. And I know that a lot of businesses in the Ferndale, Fortuna areas, Riadel areas, really count on this fair to boost their revenues during that time. Each community kind of has their little thing, like, okay, I can make it until the fair, and then I'm going to get a boom, and that'll carry me till December. And so I am more concerned, well, for the fair also. I think if we miss a year, you know, it would be really hard to try to make that up, but also for the community and the businesses surrounding. My question, though, however, is to Alicia with, does this give you great pain? Is this making your stomach hurt? Is your heart skipping beats at this $1 million?
No, because we have the funds. I think it would be difficult to spend the funds before the expiration of them. They are available. I don't see other purpose for them at this point in time. The reimbursement and long-term negotiations, which we'll have with the fair board, you know, will be a big conversation without a doubt.
But there's options there.
There's options there, yes.
And if we don't spend this, we lose this. If we don't get the extension.
It's internal. We're essentially borrowing from ourselves
Right.
on this. So,
Right.
yeah. And the interest that gets paid goes back into our pool and
Right.
supports our other pooled partners.
So, you know, we've had lots of discussions over the last 3 months. You've sat on the dais and said, this makes me nervous. I'm not comfortable. I don't hear that from you right now.
As long as you don't dip into the local and tribal consistency funds, I feel much more comfortable with this. I also think that I'm hearing us all say that we want to partner together in this, and I think that we will all be on the same page at the end of this, and we can help the fair board in any way possible to seek outside funding. There is also a lot of dollars available to support this need as well.
Thank you. I mean, I know that this is Rex's district. However, you know, the fair is widely visited by everybody in Humboldt County. And, you know, my family, we stay in Fortuna, we stay in Ferndale, and, you know, we love the fair. However, I wouldn't be staying the weekend if there was no races, because we like to visit the bar, and so I don't want to drive. And so, you know, I know what this brings to the community, and in very trying times for businesses, I think it's essential that we move forward, and with the thought that we're going to have good partnership with the fair and the fair board, and we can figure this out. It really could ruin businesses that really depend on that 2 weeks of income coming in.
Supervisor Bohn.
And Tom, I think just to make everybody feel a little bit more comfortable, when you sit down with the engineers, tell them, because the temporary fix is not in stone. It's just, it's a rough. Could you make sure that they integrate the temporary fix into the permanent fix? It's just as simple as that. That's what engineers, you know what that, and they can do that. Yes. So it all becomes part of the same problem, and then then we take that out. So when the permanent fix comes in, it now becomes $1.5 million because we've already spent $1 million on the temporary.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I think that will make life a lot easier, and Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Supervisor Bohn and Supervisor Arroyo.
Thank you. It's weighing heavy on me. It might not be weighing quite as heavily on us all in the same way. But, having just been through the budget discussions we've been through and knowing some of the other context we're facing as a county and the future, this is borrowing money from ourselves, and it's not like we're using a grant. So I do trust and believe that there is an intention to collaborate to find a way to make this work, and it's not, I don't feel like this is an easy decision at all. And I can imagine that many of our own staff and community members are looking at this going, what? And that, I feel that. I feel that some of the people that have called me about this have been our own staff. So I don't think it's easy to, and there are potentially other uses of these funds. And, while we do have this opportunity, I really feel strongly about the cap of using the finance plan. And so I'm just putting that out there right now. And I hope that we can work with contractors to make that a reality and find some other funding streams for the permanent fix. So with that, I'm certainly ready to vote. But it is not a small thing, and I know that it means a lot to businesses and a lot to community members. So all of those things can be true at the same time to me, and I just don't think we can continue to extend, despite the fact that it's our facility, and we are in a tough place right now. I don't think after we get to the end of this finance plan, that my perspective is that we can't continue to outlay funds. So that's where I stand.
Thank you for that. It was mentioned that the horse races did discontinue a couple of different years. What was the circumstances around the horse races not happening, and how many years did they not happen? Somebody answer that, please. Thank you.
World War II.
Oh, that was the last time?
No, but that was a big one. And the other one was during COVID.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that wasn't too far ago.
And I imagine many horse races around the state or the country also didn't happen because of COVID.
That is correct.
Right.
Many things didn't
So we
happen.
weren't alone in that situation,
That is correct.
which is very different than if we were the only one shutting down in terms of momentum to try and come back.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Could I add one thing since I'm standing here?
Please.
I want to actually speak to Natalie's concerns. I think that you all recognize that the Humboldt County Fair Board has really had better than a decade of a lot of turmoil. And it's been really, really a challenge for this association. And it has been a series of hits. And most recently, with the embezzlement that was discovered last year, it's really sucked the wind out of this board and the organization and the community. The grandstand is kind of like that linchpin for everything right now. If they lose horse racing now, I think you lose a lot of that spirit that is necessary to keep the organization and the community going forward. And we need some help, and I think we can work very closely with the Public Works Department. I think that there's going to be a commitment on the part of the Fair Association to do what is going to be necessary in the course of developing some sort of an agreement so that we can work with the county for refunding. I think there's, fairs in general don't represent the same thing that it once did in terms of our Americana in the United States. But we are still seeking some way for which community members can all come together and celebrate being a community. We need to start thinking more long-term. We need to have those commitments from the various partners within the community to think about making the fair relevant 50 years and 100 years from now. If we lose the grandstands, we really lose a lot in that. So I just want to offer that because it is what it represents today, but it also represents tomorrow and how we get there. So, thank you.
Appreciate that. You've got a question coming from Supervisor Bohn. Jill, if you could hang
Jill.
out. Jill?
I think part of
Thank
that,
you.
and you haven't been there long enough, but I know you've seen the records. I think where when they talked about days when they didn't have races.
That's
I
true.
think the day we're talking about, it's a 10-day fair, and there's only 6 days of races.
Today.
So if I'm not mistaken, I think Supervisor Bushnell was talking about going to the races going to the fair on days there wasn't races, and there's an average of 40 to 45% attendance, comparatively speaking, on race days. So I think that was the comparison I think she was making.
And that is absolutely part
Yeah.
of it. And I just want to add that being somebody from Oric, and I am commuting every day to Ferndale, it is an important thing to participate in and try to do our part to keep the organization moving forward.
And as Jill, and I'll just expound, up until the 50s, you couldn't have anything in a fairgrounds that wasn't agricultural related. And up until the turn of the last century, fairs were completely financed by horse racing statewide, by Hollywood Park, Golden Gate, everything else. And it's not that way anymore with the gaming and gambling avenues for a lot of people. The horse racing is not in California anyway, it's not the sport of kings anymore than it was at one time.
There's only 7 racing fairs in California, and Ferndale's the only one that's currently got the satellite wagering. We're it.
And the smallest.
And the smallest. And the most exciting. People in Del Mar love to watch our shows.
Jill, could you stay?
Supervisor Bushnell.
Maybe I should just sit down with Tom.
About the races during COVID, I believe this board allocated some recovery funds to the fair, $200,000, because we didn't have the funds because there was no fair, no racing, and that was to kind of help make up. And it just goes to show that, without that revenue coming in, the fair seems to fall short, which we recognized 2 years ago, and gave the fair, good faith, some recovery funds. And so just, just a lot along the lines of you asking the question about, the fair and what the horse races do, that was a prime example.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
You thought you retired from the board, right? How many years ago?
It's all good.
We keep bringing you back. All right. I was going to call on Jack Rice because I saw he put his hand up earlier, but now he's moved on to his other meeting, I believe, and not in the Zoom. I'll bring it back to Supervisor Arroyo.
Sorry, I'm going to try to be brief. I got to say, I'm more interested in maintaining our infrastructure and helping to support all the other things that the fair is and does for people, like the kids that show their sheep. I don't really want to kind of center this around the support of horse racing or the community pros or cons with respect to that. And I can appreciate what it means to many people. And I will tell you that definitely doesn't mean that to me or to a lot of the community members that I'm in contact with. But I do see the economic development impact and the business stabilization impact that this has, and the fact that it helps support so many youth activities. And that's what really means something to me about the fair. And so I just, I don't, and I also am curious about what the other events are that happen using the grandstands, because I'm not as familiar with those, but I can get familiar with that talking with Supervisor Bohn another day. So anyway, I get that we own this facility and we have this enormous challenge in front of us, and I would just say, I almost want to leave horse racing out of it. So,
Okay.
well, we're talking about it kind of at length. So, and I'm continuing that conversation, but I get that it's sort of like the thing that subsidizes all the other things that I love about the fair. So that's how I'm thinking about this as an issue. And yes, I'm aware.
All right, thank you very much for that. Well, I hope that you can appreciate that we don't take these decisions lightly. We really have delved in here into a very robust discussion with a lot of really good answers. Some things are a little unknown. I absolutely am hopeful that this investment will in fact get done in time to actually do this, because if it doesn't, I would see it as a very foolish investment, frankly speaking. So I'm looking forward to the contract constraints and requirements that really give us as much of a guarantee as we can. I know there are no guarantees in life, but I feel like we have had a very robust discussion here about this issue, and we're going to go ahead and do a roll call vote at this point. So,
Thank you. Supervisor Bushnell?
Yes, and I want to thank Tom and the CAO and the Fair and the Fair Board for, being here and for all of the information that's came forward. And yes.
Great. Thank you. Supervisor Bohn? Yes. Supervisor Arroyo?
Yes.
And Supervisor Madrone?
yes.
Thank you. Motion carries 4-0.
All right. Thank you, folks, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I like the crowd engagement.